And what I want to do is just talk you through just a little PowerPoint I've thrown together with maybe some of the things that I've gained over the last couple of weeks before we hit Easter, and then give people an opportunity to participate. So I'll show you how we do that. And then if there's particular questions that people have or things that they'd like to share and get involved with, that would be great. Thumbs up if you're happy with that. Good, beautiful. So I've got less people now, so I'll have to have a few thumbs just to show me that you are actually seeing a PowerPoint screen. Good, yep. Remote learning so far so good. Well, all right so far, excellent. Well, let's see how we go with this, because obviously that's one of the keys for what we're trying to do. So, two purposes to today. The first one was just to give people a chance to connect. So I don't want to do all the talking because that kind of defeats the purpose. But with a lot of people involved, you do want to make sure that you are working ways around doing that. So there's one or two little things I haven't actually tried before, which I thought I'll try. That way you can see everything happens in real time and we're all learning together from each other. The second thing that I wanted to do is kind of just to reflect on some of our own skill sets and how we can leverage these in the context of remote learning. So the first thing that I think might be useful is to visit this little Padlet. I thought, well, if I do get a reasonable number of people, and we do have a number, the easiest thing for me to do is to actually check on the Padlet if people have questions or things that they would like to know or share. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second, because what I want to do is just find that little Padlet. In the chat, I'm just giving you a Padlet link. So probably the easiest thing is if you have a browser window and you would like to at least see that, if you just copy that and paste it straight in, I think that's probably the easiest way at this stage. And while you're doing that, I'll see if I can actually share what we've got. Oh, I've got a hi. That's nice. Yes, we've got people popping up. We've got people popping up everywhere now, which is kind of nice. So initially, I thought we could target this in with a little "How are you really feeling?" But hopefully, you've had a few days over the Easter break to get away from stuff, and so this might be something that just gives us a chance to gives you a chance to ask some questions, which I'll check out. So I'll actually leave that set up as a screen. I'm going to stop sharing it just for the moment. So I'm going to leave that set up as a screen. I'm going to hook in every now and again and just see if there's any questions that are popping up there that people are wanting to look at. So does that sound like a reasonable thing at this stage? All right. So Padlet, I think, is a really good way. It's kind of the modern version of brainstorming. And I could get myself a little whiteboard and scribble on it behind you, but we'll do whiteboard stuff in a minute as well. So you can see how all of those things work. Good teaching is always good teaching, whether it's online or offline. The plans that we have are never always the reality. Whatever it is that we sit down and try to do, sometimes gets a little bit lost when we get into the classroom. Kids being kids, they're different. They come with different understandings. They pick up things at different rates, and they also have differing abilities to work independently. So that means that we've always got to be adjusting things as we go along, working out how we're going to move students forward, working out how we're going to make sure that we can address what it is that we need to do. So I reckon there's a couple of things to be aware of before we start all of this stuff, or if we've got to keep going through next term, which I suspect we will, at least for a little while. Firstly, good teaching is good teaching. Secondly, in a classroom, you'd be changing tempo, you'd be changing activities, you'd be using different things. Obviously, those of you who know that I like playing around with videos and flipped learning know that that's actually come into its own a little bit at the moment. So that's kind of nice having a little bank of those stored up because it does make it easier for me to introduce some of those concepts to students so that they have a chance to look at stuff before I come on. That being the case, it means that I can, if I am looking at Zooming, and I don't know what sort of things we have in terms of whether you're trying to do 100% of the school day online, or whether you're trying to sort of just check in with your classes once or twice a week. I know there's a lot of schools that have a lot of different models that they're working on. I think probably almost all of them are too much for us, and also too much for the students and for the parents trying to manage a lot of this stuff. I think hopefully we're all going to get a very significant pay rise when parents actually realise that this is a pretty tough gig when you've only got 2 or 3. But nevertheless, one of the things that I think is really important about this process is some of the learnings that we can take away from it. So you would always in your classrooms be using little quick quizzes as starters, an information video, which if you've produced one, or there's so many of them around that you can use. And then if I'm going to Zoom with the kids, I try and do that about 10 to 15 minutes into a lesson, so that there is an expectation that they'll bring something with them when they start. I always start with music. Those of you who are here right at the beginning would have heard a little bit of an excess running away at the start. I think that's really important. I know that particularly with the departmental schools, there are rules around Zoom and what you can and can't do. I find it nice to just leave my video off, just have some iTunes playing in the background. That allows me to actually see people are joining the Zoom. So I will usually come on when I've got 5 or 6 of the students there. So you're avoiding any of those one-on-one conversation situations. You're avoiding any of those sort of having to discuss what's going on, what's behind me and all that sort of stuff. And it means that when you start, you start. And most of the time, the kids are like you. There were a lot of them that were ready to go. So as soon as I flipped on, they were on. Others sort of joined at a slightly slower pace as we go along. So I just find that the music, it's a nice little way of just settling the mood, and it gives you a chance to just get your... Now, I don't know if you've seen this one. I'm not sure if the top of it can be seen, or if it's disappearing off. But hopefully you've seen this. It's been posted to quite a lot of the social media sites. I've seen it on LinkedIn. I've seen it on Facebook. And I think sometimes we can feel like we're either out of our depth, or that we're not doing as good a job as we probably could or should. And we forget about how quickly and how adaptable we are. We've taken something that has affected people globally, that's caused a major change in the way education occurs. And we've just gone, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? Let's get in and let's do it. And so now we're all doing something which we probably had never done before. And there's no reason we couldn't have connected this way in the past, but now we are. And that for me is probably the most important thing about all of this. And that is that what learnings we're gaining from this process, I think, don't need to be shelved when we do return to the classroom. So some of the really key things, some of the skills that we're learning that are really just-in-time skills, some of the ways we're structuring some of our learning are things that we can take with us back into the classroom when the students return. So it's not necessarily an either-or situation. Some of it is just, I guess, in a sense, being forced to upskill ourselves and the benefits that we can gain from doing that. Those of you who have worked with me or had conversations with me over the last couple of years will know that realistically, the whole idea behind flipped learning is that we focus on the 2 different steps of learning. The first one is information transfer. Here is the key information, which is basically what I'm doing at the moment. The second is sense making. What I'm demonstrating at the moment is synchronous, teacher-paced information transfer. At the moment, all I've done is try to give you some information in a way that everyone who's on is getting it at the same time at the pace that I'm giving it to you. Now, because you're all university educated, you can all read, so you don't need me to read this information to you. You may already be aware of this, and therefore you may already be able to anticipate where I'm going with this. But I haven't taken any time at this stage to try and help you process the information, help you make sense of it. And that's one of the key processes. What happens in traditional classrooms, or what happened in traditional classrooms, was information transfer was synchronous and teacher-paced. So I'll tell you what we're doing. Here's the PowerPoint. Here's the overhead. Here's the chalkboard. Here are the notes. Copy them into your book. Keep them all organized and together. Follow these steps in order to answer this question. And then I'll give you some questions, which maybe we'll go through together in class, which maybe I'll wander around, have a look at. Perhaps I'll give you an experiment which will allow you to use the information that you have and put it together. Or I'll send you home and I'll give you questions and I want you to do those for homework. So you're trying to make sense of all of this stuff on your own at home, not necessarily with anyone in your home who's particularly strong in chemistry, and trying to make sense of all of this stuff. That's really the premise behind flipped learning, which is that the information transfer is the stuff that's now become asynchronous. You look at it, you can watch it once, twice, 10 times, however long you want. You can have something else in the background. You can be eating or cooking tea or doing all sorts of other things while you're getting the information transfer. It's the low level bit, because if we just want parrots who are going to regurgitate the stuff we say, then we can stop there. But if we actually want them to make sense of the concepts, if we want them to understand what it is that we're trying to teach, then we have to do something about the sense making. We have to do something about the processing. What are you doing? What are you learning? What are you understanding about this? And so that's where flipped learning tries to bring the sense making into a more synchronous kind of environment, which doesn't necessarily have to be teacher paced. It can still be something that a teacher can facilitate with students working through examples, but at least you're there, you're able to work with the students. Now we're in a situation where we're pretty much trying to find a way of getting students to make sense of the stuff that we give them. We can push stuff out there to them. We can push worksheets. We can push videos. We can do all sorts of stuff. Different students will have different levels of connection. We can try and Zoom like we are now, but all of these things are a tricky challenge. So how do we try and make sense of that? Well, that's something that hopefully you'll have a couple of tools to help you with in a minute. The first one, and probably the most useful one for me, and certainly for those of us who are digital didacts still like to be doing a little bit of explanation, is around using some of the tools that Zoom has. And so what I've tried to do is to play a little with the sort of stuff that's already on Zoom to see how those tools can be used in a situation which does start that process of getting students a little bit involved. So one of the simplest ones is just to share the whiteboard. Now, if you haven't done this before, and we're all friends here, so there's no judgment. If you haven't done this before, you should actually find somewhere on the menu to the top or the bottom of your Zoom will be a little pen with annotate. Now, if you've got a stylus, if we were going to be off for a long time, I would say you have to get one because it just makes life so much easier. But we don't know, and we don't want to be spending whole heaps of money that we may not use again or justify at some later point. But the stylus makes drawing so much easier. But what should be the case is that you should be able to find a little annotation, and you can draw on my screen. Now we'll see if anyone can actually find that. Oh, here we go. We got scribbles starting to appear now. That's nice. That's it. Excellent. Oh, we got some methane happening as well. Beautiful. All right. So, so students can actually participate in lessons. It's not great. It's a little all over the place, partly because it does rely on being able to move the mouse. So some people are better at doing that than others. And also, if you've got a stylus, then it's just a little bit easier to write and draw things. But look, that's just absolutely fabulous. I could watch this for hours. It's lots of fun. So the whiteboard's great. Obviously, if your students start to take over things, you actually have settings in Zoom where you can stop them from annotating. And obviously I trust the students that I have in this class, so I'm not worrying too much about what's going on, or certainly whether or not anything inappropriate is going to be drawn or written on. So that's why I've given you this option, but I could actually turn this option off as well if I felt that it was a problem. And of course I can always go and clear all the drawings and we can start again. So it's one of those things that I think is a nice little useful tool for you to be able to use with your students, where possible, to at least get them to circle some things, highlight some things as you're trying to do things. Raylene.
Can you find out who's written what on the screen, or?
No.
No?
No, I can't see it. I can't see it at this stage. If I hover, I've got a little chance, but most of the time people are doing everything so quickly. And because there's a delay, because there's a lag between what you're writing and what's appearing, those things make it very difficult for me to check who's doing what. So I guess the bottom line is know your students, know your classes. Usually with the seniors, they're pretty good.
Yeah, don't do this with year 9 because you'll probably get a few funny things.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. There are, yes, there's certain classes where some of these things are probably going to be a little more helpful than others.
Can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have tried this, although I can't seem to draw on yours, but I have tried it with my year 12s and they were able to draw. But I have a fairly small class, and what we did was gave everybody a colour. Oh. And that made it easier to see who was doing what. Yeah. You know, they could all do it at the same time, but we knew who was doing what.
Yes. Well, one of the things that you might notice over on the Padlet is you can actually allow, on the Padlet you can actually, well, we've got a few people who are actually starting to paste text in. There's a little text box and you can paste text in as well, which is kind of nice. But on the Padlet you can also have identifiers. So if you were using things like Padlet with classes, the ideal would be that the students would log in with their school identifiers, which means that you can track some of these things, because the Padlet's another place where students can write inappropriate things, and
right.
And if you don't have them identified, again, you don't know who's doing it.
Yeah. I couldn't quite catch on to how you're all drawing on the screen, because even though I can do it normally when I'm teaching my class, I can't seem to do it on your screen.
It should just be. It should just be on the menu above or below the Zoom screen. You should see a little annotate with a pencil.
Oh yeah.
So that one should be the one.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks.
I also had a question about OneNote. All of the Office suite is really great for this sort of stuff. In fact, I know there's a few schools that are actually using things like SharePoint and Teams to do the same sort of thing that we're doing today. And those are really great tools that you can use. So Melinda, the OneNote I think is definitely a good one, and particularly for tracking. So that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I'm just going to clear everything again and stop sharing that for the moment. Sharing with this. So these are 2 actual screenshots that I took from the last week of term. The one on the left was a sheet that I worked through with year 7, and obviously the one on the right is a senior chemistry one. And it allowed just straight on the screen there. So I brought a Word doc in. So this is, obviously this is a Word doc. This is one little one that I thought would be useful just as a discussion pointer. And I should say, if you've been scribbling, you can still keep scribbling. But this is also a useful one for me, because if you don't have a stylus and so writing things is trickier, or circling things, you can also use your highlighter and find certain things that you think might be useful and highlight those things to draw them to students' attention. So there's multiple ways of being able to use documents that you would be talking through in class. in a similar way to the way that you would before. It's great to see a lot of people actually answering each other's questions now, which is really good. I haven't tried the whiteboard thing in Teams. Yes, and other people have, so that's great. Excellent. So that's good. So when you're looking at how you're going to work through things, and obviously one of the hard things for us is if you want to work through the steps of calculating something like a mole, a problem involving the mole concept, or the molar mass of a certain substance, then part of what you're trying to do with that is to show kids step by step. And videos are good. They are good. I know because I play with them a lot, but they're not as good as real time. To be able to sort of work through the steps in real time and to actually show the students, and here's a sheet and there's 20 questions on this sheet. Let's go through one at a time and see if we can look at what the first step is, the second step is, the third step is. And obviously part of what you're wanting to do is to help students understand the process that you're going through as much as getting the right answer at the end, and trying to emphasize to the students that showing all of these little steps, even if they're fairly strong mathematically and so don't feel like they need to show the steps, so important that they do that when they're doing these calculations, stoichiometric based questions. This was the only other thing that I wanted to I guess throw up there as a discussion for discussion and the sort of things that people are doing. So we've looked at the Zoom whiteboard. I've just thrown up the Office document. The last one that I think would be useful to have a look at is Perusall. Now this is a tool. It's basically an American-based tool, and it's used a lot for at university level. A lot of the material that I've sort of poked around in has come from Eric Mazur, who's a physics teacher or lecturer at Harvard. But I think there's some things that are useful in this program for us partly because some of what happens is you get all of that activity, and you sometimes want to direct it a little bit more, particularly if you're discussing a certain document. So I'm going to see if I can switch us over to Perusall and walk you through this process. So again, blank slides is a good thing if you're using PowerPoint, if you're comfortable with the scribbling. The internet's obviously one of the problems. I can see just a few comments and things. I'm just having a quick scroll through at the moment. But yeah, a lot of it is trying to have some level of interactivity with the students without eating up too much of the bandwidth. And the problem that we have, of course, is a lot of our students are not only children, and therefore there may well be brothers and or sisters that are trying to also access material, learn from home at the same time, and trying to coordinate all of those things can be quite tricky. All right, when you go into Perusall, Perusall will perhaps ask you to log in or register the first time. It's useful if you probably do that with your school registration. So that way it'll be something that you kind of, I try and keep things that I know I'm primarily using for school separate from other things so that you just know what you're consistently looking at all the time. So this is Perusall. What you will probably have when you first go in, I don't know if I can get it because I think it's just defaulted straight in. But if you can go straight in, what it may give you is, yes, it's popping straight through. So it usually gives you an option to enroll in a course. And you can do that without having to join. But usually what it'll do is ask for some information. And again, I always get the students to provide their school details. So what I want to do now is I want to create a course. I'm going to create a course for students to access directly. So obviously we don't have a learning management system that we're all sharing. So I want to do this so that you can access it straight up. So the course name will be Chemists. Now, when you go to the institution, when I first went in and had a look at it, was a list of American universities, which is tricky for us over here. But I have to say, I said to them, look, I'm looking at setting this up with some students in Australia. What are the options? What can I do? Because I think there's a thing called Example University or something like that, or Example College. And they actually connected my school in straight off. So if I start to type it, I should find that my school comes up straight away. So for the purpose of the exercise, you will be part of St. Philip's Christian College just for the short term. The course start date will be today, and we might end this course tomorrow so we don't put too much burden on everyone. My enrolment estimate is 34 at this stage. Now you can actually split these into groups, because obviously this is it's set for universities which could have hundreds of enrolments. And so it's allowing you to sort of change up group sizes. But anyway, I'll leave it. I'll try and make sure that we get everyone on at the moment. So let's just in case we've got people coming in and out, jump those numbers up a little bit, which will be a little bit large, but that's fine. When you go down to select materials, they do have a lot of textbooks that are available. Again, a lot of those are at university level. So at this stage, I'm just going to upload my own document. So I'm going to save the changes. What that now gives me is a code. So I'm just going to scribble that code down and put that in. And that means when you go on, you should be able to join this course. So we'll see if we can, get that to happen. Okay. So I've just put into the chat the little code, the course code, which means you should be able to join this course. And that means that I should actually be able to see once you get that. Look at that. I've already got some students in my course. Fantastic. That's brilliant. So that's how easy this is to use. It's very, very quick. And what I have now is a number of students in my course. So if you've had a chance to join, you can interact with this. If you haven't, you might at least still be able to see what we're doing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Documents. When I go to Documents, obviously I have talked to them about some of our textbooks over here, but there's obviously a few little challenges with that. But what I can do is I can upload a document. So let me just see a document from my computer, if I can add one. I don't think we need the whole chemistry one just for now. So let me just see if I can add this little tips one. Mainly because it's a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit easier. So now all I want to do is open it. When I open it, you should now see in front of you, probably on the Zoom screen, but also on the separate browser screen, if you've got this open, you should see this document. What I can then do, and this is where we bring the synchronous aspect of processing, of being able to process the information that we have into our online learning. Because what I can do is I can select something and say to my class, do you agree that this is an important point and why? So I'm not sure if you can see, I know there's a little bit of a delay, and I know that when a few other people were doing this, because the other thing which I will tell you can do, don't do it just yet because we'll end up with colors everywhere. But what you should be able to do as well is say, well, actually, no, I don't agree that that's the most important one. I think 3 is, and I'm going to highlight 3 and tell you why. So you can actually have students interacting with exactly the same document that you're interacting with at the same time. You can also create either polls. I've used Poll Anywhere, or you can create a poll just where we are on Zoom, just to get a little bit of quick feedback. So I've now got that little poll that I've just created in real time to get a little bit of feedback for what's happening. Obviously, if you are using this as a diagnostic tool, so if you're using this to say, well, do the students kind of understand the MOL concept, or if I ask a quick question, get them to feedback to me, I can quickly have a look at something like this, get the feedback in real time. I've got 24 4 people who've already responded to this in 44 seconds. So it's a very, very fast tool for just gathering information quickly, and for you to be able to say, okay, well, look, I've got enough yeses and maybes that I might continue on with this for just a little bit longer. So that for me is part of what these sorts of things are doing. I'll just end that poll for a moment there. And that's given me a quick amount of feedback that I can then use with something like my perusal situation. So if I just pop back here for a second, then I can come back here. I can see now that somebody's highlighted learn how to make video. That's Fiona. So I can see. So Fee, if you're there, can you tell us why you highlighted number 5? You might need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I just annotated it. So if you click on it, it should say something.
Now I'm not sure if everyone can see that. If you click on 5, can you all see what Fee's written there? Because I know some of the things are conversations between the teacher and the student, and other things are more broad. So, yep. So we got some feedback. So Fee said she started to use Screencastify to make some video content for flipped lessons in chemistry, and that's why learning how to make video is more important than putting on your own oxygen mask. So this is why I think this is a useful tool, because already I've actually got students talking to each other, not just to me. So I've got students interacting with something that another student have highlighted, has said, look, I don't necessarily agree with what the teacher has said, but I've got a reason why I think this is useful. So that's why I find this tool, which I have to say I've only just started using myself. But if you put your own documents up there, I've put 1 or 2 up there with complex diagrams, and the diagrams have actually been left off when it loads up. And I think there is a point where it doesn't want you to download too much. I've also, for the booklets that I've shared, I've pulled a lot of those booklets apart so that there's kind of a particular concept with the questions, and then I just go through that with the students rather than trying to upload entire documents, because I think that's one of those tricky things. You've solved your own problem with how to annotate, because I can see it. The poll was from Zoom, and I think that the thing with the poll, I actually use Poll Everywhere. I'm not sure if you've used Poll Everywhere, but you can actually embed them into your PowerPoints if you want, or you can do the same thing that I did with you earlier on with the Padlet, which is to go in, copy the link that you want, stick it into the chat, and then move it forward from there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, because I've pretty much got to a point now where I've shared a lot of those key things that I thought might be useful for you. I thought it might be a bit more targeted to have some specific tips and tricks and things. But don't forget that good teaching is always going to be good teaching. The things that you're doing well now are the things to keep doing. Just think about the different ways that we can do this. And there are just a huge amount of tools out there at the moment. A lot of organisations are providing free trials or free support. Now, obviously, they're going to want you to pick it up afterwards. We know that. That's what they're in business. That's what they're going to do. But at an absolute minimum, what it does do is allows you, with a reason, to try something, say, does this work? Does it engage my students? Is it something that I find easy to use, or is it too difficult? And so you're actually able to trial things on the run. And that's always the problem that we have with a lot of the tools that are available. We'd like to get to there. We'd like to try and play with it. We just don't have time. There's so many other things that are happening. And so you feel like you're a little bit, it's difficult to find the time to do those things. So this is a great time in some ways for you to have a play with stuff. Find out what works and what doesn't, and then hopefully some of those things we can actually transfer back into the classroom once all of this craziness is over. So look, I hope some of that's been a little bit helpful for you. What I'd like to do is stop talking, give people a little bit of an opportunity. If you've got the hand up tool, you can sort of click that and I'll see you. Otherwise, I will keep reading through some of the chat, because I know there's been a lot of really good stuff that's been popping up there, and there's some fantastic things that we don't want to lose. And yeah, time is always one of the issues. But are there things that people would like to comment or share at this point, knowing that if you press the space bar, you can unmute yourself, but obviously we've got a lot of people, so if we all try and talk at once, it's going to be bedlam. So we'll see how we go. Lois.
Hi there, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good. We've been doing this now for 3 weeks. We closed our classrooms, not our school as such. And what we found is the students really need that one-on-one or classroom interaction with the teacher and the other students. So to have them chatting and doing this kind of stuff is really important, to have that interaction. But we have to use Team Drive. We're not allowed to use Zoom or anything else. But it works in exactly the same way, which is good.
Excellent. And I think that's one of the important things. I know initially when we were set up with Zoom, we were set up with the basic license, which actually means that all your Zoom sessions run out after 40 minutes, and you'll see mine isn't anymore. But I actually found that by going on a little bit later, I could have 5 or 10 minutes left of the session. I actually passed the hosting on to one of the students and just let them talk to each other without me there. Because I think one of the things that the kids already at that early stage, and I can only imagine what it's going to be like when we return, we're missing that social interaction, that opportunity to talk to each other, not necessarily about science, although what else would you want to talk about, but just about what was going on and what was happening and all of those sorts of things. So, and sometimes I think it's about being creative too. I had a double period with my year 10s in the last week, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And we've been doing chemical reactions, and I thought, right, what I want you to do is go out, spend half an hour, 40 minutes, I'll give you some time, go and find a chemical reaction that's either happening or that you can create, video it and bring it back. And then we just had a little bit of a look at each other's stuff, and some of it was like a photo of the rust gathering on one of the outdoor pieces of furniture. But, you know, I had barbecues. I had someone who got some vinegar and bicarb. And so it was all sorts of different stuff that was happening. So some of them, I had one who had held a knife over the candle and showed the little black, look, it's incomplete combustion. Yay! So you get some little nice things happening. And I think that's part of the whole process of doing this is we want to try and be creative, get them up, get them out, move them around, get them to do science, even though all we feel we can do is get them to read science or hear about science. The more we can get them to do it, even if it's a simple level, it's probably connecting even better because they're doing it around their homes. So, but yeah, I think that connection that they have with each other is certainly something that they're missing at the moment.
Sorry, can I just add to that? We've had a recommendation that we can't let the kids into Zoom. They have to go into a meeting room because of the potential for bullying.
Yep.
So presumably you're recording your sessions even though you're not necessarily there. So they know that they could be listened into?
Well, it depends. Usually there's only a couple of minutes. So I don't give them like half an hour or anything to chat to each other. It's just a little reconnect and that sort of thing. And usually the person that I've hand on to, I've had a chance to send a message to. You'll notice in the chat, the default setting is everyone. So if you, and I don't know if you've tried this, but if you go onto that little arrow, you can actually see everyone who's there, and you can send a specific message to just one person. So if you know someone's there and you just wanted to ask an individual a question, or say, look, I want to hand this over to you. Let me know if anything happens. It's putting more responsibility on and it's passing the buck ourselves. But I was just more concerned about the fact that at that stage we'd been off like Lois for almost 2 weeks at that stage, and I think the kids were starting to just feel that disconnect. and that's one of the things. But yeah, look, there's a lot of things that are different for us to manage, and I think that's one of the key things. Is this is a very, very new environment. We've never, I've been teaching for 30 something years, and never ever had anything like this. This is just a complete brand new thing that's never happened before. So we're all making it all up as we go along. I think you do need to cover yourself, Elizabeth. I think it's important that you make sure that you know what you can and can't do. We actually did have something that was laid out to us initially, that was that they didn't want us to be recording sessions, which was difficult. But some kids do turn up. I mean, you've already seen some of the horror stories with Zooms that have been shared on social media, where people just take their camera wherever they're going, and there's certainly some things you don't want to see, and certainly you don't want to record them. So we've sort of had discussions about that, and some schools will be saying yes and no. And I think in a lot of ways, there are arguments worth having to fight for, and other things where you just go, okay, well, if that's a school policy, then we just leave it at that. But at least giving them a chance like this to talk, even if you are there, it gives that little chance for the students to connect. And I think, and as it is for us, it's just a really nice thing to be able to do when we've all been in homes for some time now.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions, contributions? We do something like this on a regular basis, maybe share around the hosting, and other people share some of the ideas and things that they have. The one thing I absolutely guarantee is that all the expertise does not reside here. It resides here. And I think the more opportunities we have to talk to each other, talk about what we're doing, what's worked, what hasn't, have a look at the Padlet. Even after we finish this session, that'll still be live, so you can add things there. I'll add little comments and things if I see questions in there. And maybe, we have a look in another week at another session and have someone else who wants to step up and grab some stuff, or we can just have it as a Q&A session, whatever works for people. At this stage, it's kind of nice to get that connection with other people, which is good.
Cole, can I just ask a quick question? Probably won't take you long to answer. I missed how you got the poll up.
No, I don't know if you've got this in your settings, because I haven't. Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll actually see if I can shift you onto the host. Okay, so you should be the host now.
Right, I see.
And my poll has lost. I've lost my poll. So
okay.
Have you got
I see it
as an option?
Yep.
So
yeah. So you just set your question there. So as a host, you can do it in Zoom.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
So you can do it. You can do however you like with these sorts of things. Some of them are default settings. There's also a thing called breakout room, which again, for the reason that Elizabeth talked about before, you may not necessarily want to split the kids up. But the breakout room can also be quite useful if you want to set sort of little group work. Here's the problem. Talk about it in your little groups. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm going to bring everyone back together. So you can control when the breakout happens. You can actually assign the groupings, or you can just say split into threes, and it'll just randomly pick people to work with. And it's actually quite a useful thing if you get the chance to use it multiple times, because the kids then realise they're all going to be mixed around anyway, so they might as well just do what they need to do and then move on. So breakout room's another one, but a lot of these are settings on Zoom that you kind of have to go in, usually on the website, not actually on the app, to change, or usually to enable, because the default settings for a lot of these things is off. So you just have to go through, same thing with the polling, and just sort of flick them onto on, and you're right. Sound good?
Yep, it's great. Thanks.
Well, we're in your hands now, so whenever you want to finish, we're good.
Okay. All right, well, I have to go to another meeting in 5 minutes. So how do I pass this back?
If you go on my name, up on the top right corner, and when we can share this around, doesn't have to be me, you should see 3 little dots.
Above Speak of You.
Well, have you got the gallery view or the speaker view?
I've just gone to gallery view.
Okay, so if you can see me,
Yep.
if my little rectangle on the
Yep.
top has, if you go to the top right corner, you should see 3 little dots.
Yep.
And if you
Make
go on the 3
host.
little dots, it's a drop, make host. That's it.
Oh, beautiful.
You just did.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Okay. So that's how simple it is. So it's a nice way for being able to actually pass that responsibility around, give other people a chance to share, and also, as I say, if you want to then sort of say, well, if a few of you want to sort of have a chat later on, you can pass that on and say, look, I'm sorry, but I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, there's lots of little tools in this, and I think Teams is great. People have used a number of different applications, and I think the most important thing is just to try and work through the issues just a little step at a time. It's like anything. If you try and take on too many new things, you'll just be overwhelmed. So, you know, move little by little by little. And I think that way you'll know when you feel frustrated with something, you want to get a better bit of equipment, or you want to be a little bit better with a particular application, then all of those things are telling you it's time to upskill, it's time to move on. It's a lot of this just-in-time learning stuff that we're doing now, which is really about trying to make sure that you've got you search what you need to move you to the next stage, and don't try and do too much too quick. Because the thing is, the kids connect with you, and that's what all the flipped learning says. No matter how many, because there's millions of videos now. If you need video material, you don't have to make it yourself. But what a lot of the learning suggests is that the kids connect with you. They don't connect. Well, some of them are connecting with me now. I get messages all the time. It's really nice, but they connect with you. You know, unless you're Eddie Wu and you've got a public profile, they connect with you. They want to hear you. They want to see you. They know your little jokes, so they're more likely to laugh at them. They don't necessarily like mine. So this is what they want. And I think just having a go at things, trying to produce a video for every class, for every day, is overwhelming. And I've got to tell you, I've had a little bit of experience with this. I don't do that. It is too much. It's just way too much. So pick a class, pick a group, pick a day and say, I'm going to make one for each class and that'll be the one for the week, or something like that, where you're feeling like it's a little thing that you can achieve rather than a huge thing that's just, you'd be working 24/7, which I mean, most of us do anyway. And we're on holidays after all, and we're giving up time to do this. So that's what, and that's because that's who we are. That's the sort of people we are. So in the end, it's just about making sure that you're comfortable with the level of change that you're making, and walking the students slowly through that level of change as well, because this is very, very different for them too. They've never seen anything like this at all. So we've got to walk them slowly through it as well. Any other questions before we sign up?
No, in terms of using Perusall, it looks like a really organised platform. We've been told to have a Google Classroom for every class. Could you see them both working together, or would it be one or the other?
Look, the thing with Perusall is you can actually allocate assessments and do virtually everything in there. I wouldn't do that. Only because I think you've probably got a learning management system. You may or may not have an admin system as well, where things have to go together. And the more things you have, the more places there are for things to get lost. And also it's confusing for the kids. What I would have is a link on my Google Classroom, to Perusall, so that you can go there if you wanted to particularly talk about something. It's like anything. If you feel that there are ways, or if there's a particular stimulus document or something you want to look at, something you want to analyze, and that's a better platform to do it in, then I would do it. And link it off Google Classroom. So it's saying Google Classroom is our learning management system. This is where we go for information, but I will also sometimes take you to Perusall or Education Perfect or Style or any one of a million other places, Science by Doing, all sorts of different stuff. So I think you want to try for the students, keep everything together. That's the one place for them. I know if I've got Zoliver, I go here. That's where I go to find stuff. She may let me jump off onto other places. if you have the option, and you don't always have the option, but where you have the option, when you're doing your links, try and look when it comes up for new window. It'll say existing window or new window. As much as possible, if I move them off the learning management site, I like them to move to a new window. So that means that the original one's still there, but it'll open a new window for the new app, and then they can still go back to, this is where everything is. These are just some other places that we go to from here. So otherwise, they're trying to go forwards and backwards in the same window, and it just becomes quite challenging. So that would be my little take on that.
Thank you.
Pleasure. One more before we go. Looks like we're good. I see a few smiling faces, so I'm not sure whether they're happy faces or relieved that it's over.
That was great.
Look, I hope there's been a few interesting things to take away. As I say, my pleasure. I will. We've recorded the session, so I'll try and tidy it up a little bit and remove some of the oohs and ahs and me scrabbling around looking for stuff, because you don't need to watch that again, and put that out there. So hopefully if there's a few little things that you miss, you might have the opportunity to have a look at them later on. Sound good?
Yep. Great.
Good luck with everything. It's look, it's a bit of a new world at the moment, and I think once we return to school, some things might be a little bit different anyway. Hopefully, at least we won't have to sell immunisation quite as hard as we've had to in the past. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. A few thumbs up, which is very nice. Thank you very much. You found the little reactions, which is always good. What I'll do is perhaps I should do a quick poll to see whether or not it's worth having another session next week. If we did that. Yes, no?
Could we try having a meet in Teams too?
Yes, why don't? Oh, look, I'm happy to.
In the statewide staff room, maybe.
Yes. We'll see if we can. We'll see if we can do that. My Teams account is the school's account, so I'm just not quite sure how that will work. But I might have a little bit of a look and see. I think that would probably be. Would that be something that would be useful to people? If I can, I'm seeing a few nodding heads here. So, I mean, as much as possible, if we can duplicate your experience. Obviously, I don't necessarily need you to do it the way I do it, but if we can sort of share some of these things around, I think that would be great. So maybe we look at setting something up with Teams next time, maybe similar time next week, and see how we go. Take it from there. Sound like a plan?
Oh, good.
All right. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Enjoy the upcoming weekend, and good luck with everything.